dealing with budget, and we're going to get started right away. But before we do, I do want to just want to give a quick thank you to everybody that did have a part in this, in the process, writing up their budget, sending in concerns. We appreciate that. Also, I'm going to ask and remind people that we all have different views. I'm going to remind this to the council. Though we all have different views, we're on the same team. We're all trying to get to the same destination. We all want what's best for Burlington, so I think we just need to keep that in mind. Different people think different ways, but we all are on the same team. We're on the same train. So let's remember, ultimately, it comes down to what's best for Burlington. So with that being said, if you don't have anything to open up with, I thought the quickest way to get to where we're going tonight would be to start with cuts, and as you're reading off your cuts or whatever, if you want to address what you think they're for. But I think addressing the cuts first, and then coming to a consensus on what we want to what we're satisfied with, or what we're going to come to an agreement with for added personnel, that sort of thing. So we started down that in last time. Do you want to start yourself?
All right, so are we given everything? Because I don't.
Just whatever you've got
Okay.
that you feel like would be pertinent for tonight.
All right. Well, I don't think that we should cut anything as of right now. I think what we have is put together. On staffing, there's nothing I would want more than to have more 6 police officers and 6 firefighters and maintain the staffing at the end of the COPS grant, and even summer nuisance help. And I have heard a lot more back from individuals saying they would support a tax increase. So it's hard for me to say, I guess, which one we should go with, or if we decide as a council what's best. I don't think the 1-in-1 is really enough, 1 officer, 1 firefighter. It wouldn't, to me, that's not gonna offset overtime or whatever we're trying to get rid of. I think there needs to be more. So whether it's all 6, the whole thing, or somewhere in the middle, such as, 3 officers, 3 firefighters, it just, I don't know. I guess I'd like to hear what everyone else has going on, but that's it for me.
Okay, we're going to do the veteran first. Mr. Scott?
I don't have any cuts to offer. If I did, they'd be nickel and dime, and they're not going to address the issue that we have long term. I would reiterate what I said Monday night, is we have to make a commitment, along with approving this budget, that we will discuss the best way to handle losses at Memorial Auditorium, look at the possibility of selling city-owned property such as the depot, community field, the Flint Hills Golf Course. See if it's to our benefit or to the community's benefit to do that or not. I mean, we don't know, sitting here and not doing anything about it. I'd still support looking into privatizing some of those things that we do, like wastewater treatment, water, fresh water, and library services. And they may or may not pan out to be a financial benefit to the community and the taxpayers, but we don't know if we don't look. The other thing that I feel more strongly about than ever, after having multiple discussions, and that is introducing the franchise fee. A lot of people have said it won't pass. A lot of people said it will pass, but I think if we put it in the right perspective, and this was a recommendation that I received today via an email, we have given away a lot of property tax through tax abatements, through TIF, for private businesses. And there's one that won't be paying property taxes for like 20 years. This is a way to get part of that back. And it was suggested that if we do go with the franchise fee, that we ask for the full 5%. We use what's necessary to fund the public safety positions that we desperately need, and the remainder goes to property tax relief, just like we do with the local option sales tax. That may make it more palatable, and it may make it the only way we have to fund all of the positions. I know this year we're just needing to do the 2 police officers and firefighters, and following the progression that the police chief had put through on his. But I think it's one that I think it's one that when we approve this budget that we need to say that's a direction we can take. That's how we can fund it. I don't, what Jim has presented in the property tax increases, I think they're going to be, that's going to be noticed. You pay your property taxes, most people, twice a year. The taxes on your utilities you're paying once a month. It's not as big a bite. Probably dollar for dollar, and then using the math that I've used, it comes out about even. And that's my position at this point. I'm not saying I won't look at whatever everybody else wants to present, but that's where I'm at.
I'm going to give you, I'm going to be brief, give you a quick look inside my brain. But I've got 2 things, but I do want to say this. When we're doing these cuts, we're not just looking at the numbers. You just can't go across to look at the numbers. I know that some people are. When you do that, you're really taking a chance at making some huge mistakes, because that's not what a community consists of. Just if you go on the computer, you can Google the top cities in Iowa. Actually, I Googled, I found out you can find out who's moving in Iowa, who's moving out, who's moving to this area, and who's moving out, and why they're not moving. You can get those numbers on the computer, the movers, the haulers, they have all that stuff. And so you're not seeing a lot of people moving into other states. What you're seeing is a lot of interstate moving around, and actually it's kind of at a decline for Iowa. You're starting to see people getting bolstered up, and they're moving to warmer climates. So what I'm saying is I'm looking at what can we do to sustain what we have? What can we do to make people that are looking at moving, because a lot of the moving is happening interstate, how can we make Burlington look attractive with our peers? Those sort of things. And when you go to Burlington, it says, what's great about Burlington? It pops up. You'll see Perkins Park or Snake Alley. That's usually the top one. And then you have a few mixed in there. I don't see a lot. And I just want to say this again. I know we need to address a problem, but I've never gone to a city and the first thing that I checked was, what kind of crimes are there going on in the community. I'm just throwing that out there because I don't want people to just flip out and say, we've got to have 100 men on the ground. We don't need 100 men, but we do need to add some. I agree with that. All right, that being said, I looked at Don Fitting. How bad do we need recycling? I have to ask, this number stands out. It says recycling service fee, $4,222, 670. What does that mean? What is recycling costing the city of Burlington? Is it something that we can maintain, or is that some money that we can, maybe we need to say goodbye to recycling and...
Well, we're a member of the Solid Waste Commission. The state has regulations that stipulate that each entity, each municipality has to strive and meet certain reduction from, I think it was 1989, somewhere around there in the 80s, there was a solid waste flow stream from your entity going into a landfill. They wanted to conserve space, so the legislature set reduction goals that you were to shoot for. You had to submit reports, you have to add tracking of this, that, and the other, And one of the choices that were made by most communities is to group together in a commission-type format, which is what we did with our other member communities in the Solid Waste Commission. And the commission tracks those numbers for us. So we're partners with all of these other communities in this commission. If we were to stop being a member, there is an exit procedure that needs to be followed. And I believe, I don't know that we've ever actually looked at that, but it's a very expensive venture. There's a community recently that, very, very small community that I think unincorporated, and they are removing themselves, and they're paying the Solid Waste Commission, or they're going to be paying the Solid Waste Commission a dollar amount that I don't think that they recognized or realized in doing what they were doing. But for us to leave the commission would be a very, very expensive. There's a format to be followed, but you have to pay the commission monies because there's exposure to the commission for the landfill, the waste that goes into the landfill, post-closure costs. There's a formula that's set up. It would be a very, very expensive venture for us to do that.
My best guess is 1.5 to 3, somewhere between $1.5 and $3 million exit fee to get out of that, and that would be a step that you'd have to take to get out of the recycling program.
But what is it costing us per year?
And then on top of that, then we would become an entity on our own that we would have to comply with state regulations with regards to solid waste reduction, tracking that mechanism. We'd have to do that work ourselves.
That is part of the utility bill that customers pay. So the recycling fee is what on a monthly basis per each resident?
I think it's currently $3.55, going up to 10 cents by 10 cents at July 1st.
$3.65. So that's
That's
a
that
part
trash.
of every resident's fee. The city itself doesn't, outside of what would be on any of our separate bills that we might have, doesn't have a cost for the recycling program.
So we're locked in, we're,
Well, there's a fee. There's a cost to get out, and it's a pretty expensive.
But we
but this is
can get
costing
out.
us, this
But
is
we-
costing
but
us
that door is open.
$422,000 a year?
Doesn't doesn't cost us. It's a
What's what I'm saying, I'm just trying to find out, what does it cost us as a community to do this? What's the?
Well, I think in my breakdown, my presentation, I think it was something like $422,000 was going to be the total charge to the city of Burlington over the fiscal year 2018. That's based on 9,650 households paying $3.65 a month for 12 months. That's what we would pay, and that covers the curbside collection program, that covers their processing and selling of the materials, that covers the household hazardous chemical facility at the landfill, the use of it, their education program.
I'm just saying, I just think it's something that we need to look at anyways. I think we need to, instead of, knowing that it's a lot, I would like to entertain that just because, my green bucket that you buy for $5 or whatever, it got broke like 6 years ago.
Right.
And I've been meaning to go out there and get one, and in 6 years I've made it out there to get one, even though I go out there to the recycling place to drop off my recyclables. And,
Right.
I was just curious, is this something that we gotta have, because we really need to start looking at those things. I guess right now, there's no sense in keeping any longer and delaying
Okay,
or
thank you.
bothering this.
John,
but-
wouldn't it make sense, though, we would save money if we recycled more? And
Well-
take some of the tonnage off of the tipping fees?
The tipping fees would go down if
Yeah.
people would recycle more, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The other place that I had for cuts is the auditorium. I'm not for shuttering the auditorium. I think it means too much to the community, and I think we really need to give some pump of the brakes on that. What I am for is terminating our relationship with VenueWorks. I think they've had plenty long enough time to give it the try, and I just don't think, I think they're a good company, I just don't think they're good for Burlington and for the venue that we've got. I'd like to get rid of I'd like to shut Venue Works, actually, it's gonna sound cold, but I'm thinking about trying to get police officers and a new detective, but I would like to cut ties with Venue Works as soon as possible. It's their actual budget was this was the actual $188,314. They're budgeted for $191,000. That's what money we're paying them for payroll and benefits and management fees. That gives us some help your way, and I feel comfortable about that. As far as running it for the rest of the year and taking care of the rest of the commitments, I believe we've got staff in place that can do that. That's it. Everything else I've gone through several times. I feel like you start cutting it, and I could give my spiel, and I've got, if anybody wants to see this, what the process that I went through to come up with this, send me an email, and I will email you the email that I emailed to myself that has all of these links, the information that I read about communities that are getting smaller in Iowa and the ones that are growing, about the things that help communities sustain themselves, those sort of things, which I think is important. I'm turning into the person that I used to disgust me. That was,
I'm just glad it wasn't my computer this time.
anyway, that being said, I'm gonna go back to what I said before. I don't believe that anything was asked was over the line. Nothing. I know. I believe it's something that they need. I don't believe that we can do it any other way but with a tax increase, and I'm against tax increases. I'm still on the state platform that I ran on, and you guys reelected me. That's your fault. I said, I want to protect that tax line. I want to protect the young kids, for the youth. I want to stand up for them. And I said something really sophomoric and young, but I was, I want there to be music in the streets. Well, there's no music in the streets. But I do want to hold the line on the stuff that I said. I think we need to hold the line on that. The only way that we're going to get this done and meet this need, and I think the only one that I can get my hands around, and the people, my constituents, the emails I'm getting, are the franchise fee. The people are saying that they would rather do that, have it spread out, so that other people, a person said this to me. Well, actually, we were talking, and this came out in the conversation. I don't know who said it. He said, well, with the franchise fee, a person that could be paying some of that money could be somebody that we're arresting. I said, hey, help us pay a bill that may put your butt in jail tomorrow. Well, everybody gets to pay on that. And yeah, I wish I would have censored myself a little bit better before I started this spiel, but that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. We don't make this happen long-term and sustain it without a franchise fee that is set aside just for the police officers and firefighters, whatever we're going to get, and it's that alone. And whatever they go over, we go back to tax relief. Outside of that, I can't get down with anything. I can find, a little over $200,000, and I would ask you to work your magic on that. That's all I've got. Everything else, I wouldn't take anything from anybody. We're going to pay for it. I am for adding the additional, was it $22,000? I think you had on the budget for the nuisance. I'm all in on that. I think that's going to be a help. That's where I am. Help me see the light. Mayor Pro Tem?
I concur with what Councilman Scott and you have said about looking into the things that we need to check on. The auditorium's a prime example. And, as far as the golf course is concerned, we've talked about that at some length before, and I'm all in for that. I think we should be doing that. We should be doing that on a regular basis, and that's one of the things that, like I said, I wanted to be one of our goals for this year. But I think it takes a lot of in-depth. We just can't pull the trigger and say tonight, well, the auditorium, you're done. Venue Works, you're out of here, because we can't prove that we can do it any better ourselves. Until we do some in-depth look at it. I don't think we can. That's just my personal opinion. As far as where my position is right now, I'm in favor of adding a police officer so a chief can put another detective on to relieve the stress on those detectives. Looking at these options, police chief made a recommendation. He suggested 2 officers, 2 officers, 2 officers, but that was the starting point. That was his recommendation. I'm okay with that, but I don't think we can afford it. We just don't have the money for that. As far as putting the franchise fee up for a vote, I'm okay with that. If the public wants to support that, then fine, let's do it. It gives us a different stream of revenues and can help us get to where we want to be. Right now, my suggestion is this. I'm going to say we're going to keep 50,000 from the library, cut 20,000 from the economic development, add 10 cents to the property tax levy, and add that police officer. And that should be able to handle it. 10 cents to the property tax, add the police officer, and keep the 2 cuts from the library and the economic development fund. That's my recommendation.
Mr. Fleming?
You're up.
Am I next?
Yep.
I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but I'm strongly opposed to a franchise tax. First of all, I don't know how you can do a lot of planning, counting on that income for your budget, and then you find out it's defeated. I don't know how you get around that, but be that as it may, I think I have a responsibility as a councilman to make these tough decisions along with the other 4. And it'd be nice if the public could come in on every issue we have, but that isn't the way the system's set up, so I'm opposed to that. I guess you all know that by now. I guess I haven't changed where I was a couple days ago. I mean, I think with a very modest price or tax increase, we could put 2 new police officers in the system and 1 fireman. Those numbers are not sacred, and I know the police and fire would like to have more than that, obviously. But to me, this would be a giant step in the right direction to address public safety in this community. I think 75% of our budget is personnel, and a big chunk of that is police and fire. And there are these other cuts we can make, and the ones that Jim pointed out, I can accept those. I don't have a problem with any of those. But I'd still like to go ahead and not have a franchise tax deal and go ahead and do what we should be doing anyway.
Well, this option then, Jim, if this is right, what Bob, Mr. Fleming's suggestion would be the 3rd option down the page. 2 officers, add an additional firefighter, and a nuisance inspector?
No.
No? Okay.
Well, I'm not strong on that.
Okay.
Either way, I can go there.
All right, so that would be 46 cents to the levy, or a little bit less if you didn't add the nuisance inspector, right? And then we could take out the 9 cents that we'd save from the library and the
That's about
economic
what?
development.
2%?
36-cent levy increase would be closer to 3%.
The way I figured it was 2.5%, but give that as it may.
I'm doing ballpark, so.
Yeah.
One of the things that Eric mentioned with the nuisance, we're not, as he's thinking through the fees, we don't know how many nuisances he would process, but that, if you had an extra person in there, if they were able to process 50, or no, it was 100 nuisances. No, you were saying 50, we're just
If
talking.
we abated 50 that came to council,
If you abated 50 that came to council, which is processing several more than that, but
yeah.
you got maybe 5,000 of revenue from that. You also mentioned the potential to raise on your, what fee?
The rental fee. Currently, we have 2 inspectors that do rentals. The fees collected don't quite cover 1 full-time officer. They're paying benefits. If we raised it $10 a unit, that'd be an additional 10 to 13,000, depending on how many rentals we inspected a year.
So you could talk about coming close to netting on that position with a fee increase on the rental permit process, which may
We
be,
should plan on, though,
which
that it's
may
gonna
be a
cost us
valid
money.
thing to try to do as a group. And if you did that, you'd pull down the cost with what you're talking about, Bob, or even what you're talking about from what I had shown on those sheets by that 20,000.
Yeah, good.
But, yeah, you're still talking, I don't know, 30 cent property tax increase to accomplish that.
Which percentage-wise is less than 3.
If we're at 15, that's about, I'm sorry, that's about 2 if we're at 1590, so
We're
it's
about
about 2.
2.5%.
But it's where you all come together on
I
this.
haven't heard a lot of consensus so far.
I'd like to see protected money. I'd like to see if we're gonna do this, that these positions are protected. I think the franchise fee does that. I think, in so many ways, it's just perfect for this situation. I think, but, and maybe I'm wrong. I've gotten one email back today that,
I'm just concerned that if we put all our hopes into that one thing and it doesn't come through.
I haven't. I came with about $200,000 in cuts. You know,
Right.
that's what I've got. Those are my 2 options. So, I mean, it's not like I'm banking on that. I'm saying I'd love to give the police chief what he wants, and I'd like to help the firemen out, you know?
Yeah.
And that's gonna take a greater commitment and a long time commitment is what
I think it wouldn't, I mean, not to say that we need to do both, a small tax increase and the franchise fee. But if we chose one of these options, whether it be 3 officers, maintain the cops grant, and 3 firefighter personnel, you know, that's a lot, it's lower than jumping right up to 6 and nuisance help. Because I have heard so much about the franchise fee not passing a vote, but you know, you both have made excellent points about would be similar amounts, but spread out, so it doesn't hit you hard. And I don't think a lot of people think about it that way.
I'm getting people that are just coming right out saying, tax us.
Yeah,
Let's just go ahead and
I
raise
have too.
taxes. And I think probably the only people that are reaching out to me saying, let's do franchise fee are people that already know that I'm against raising taxes. So they're saying, let's do it that route. Maybe that may be part of it, but I'm probably getting 90% of my emails, and I know that you guys are getting some of them, because some of them are just to the council, all of us are getting, are saying it's okay to pay extra for what they want. I think it comes down to, I guess, how we want to do it. With taxes, again, we can raise taxes and say that they're going to be for this, but another council can come in and, you know, say, hey, we need to cut here, and, you know, and just tear down everything that we did. I think that's something to think about as well. And again, that's our job, to think forward thinking.
I kind of wonder if, as you're talking about different staffing within the PD, if it wouldn't hurt to have Chief come forward and talk about the genesis of why he presented that request the way he did, what he's trying to accomplish with that, and what he would try to accomplish with whether it was 1 or 2 positions, and whether it really is a CID person or a different way that you would use those if you were doing those reduced levels.
I think the most important thing to mention again is when we talk about 6, I mean, realistically, you're talking 3 or 4 years down the line. Not to say that it doesn't have to be sustained, and it has to be sustainable, but I think try to kind of put that into perspective as we go. You know, as I pointed out that matrix to you, at a minimum, we have 3 replacements, and probably by this time next year in 18, there would be a total of 4 replacements that have to be replaced just to keep us at 43. And that's why I propose to add 2.
4 by when?
4, I'm confident we'll have 4 replacements by this time next year in 18. And 3 of those are going to come relatively soon. I mean soon as in probably the next couple months. So as we talk about that, we have to consider what it's going to take to even keep us where we're at. That's part of this discussion. That's why I brought that forward. And so if we were to add 2 people to that, granted it adds to the budget, but it could soften the blow as we move forward for these unexpected, hey, I'm going to go work for another department. You know, where right now, when you're at absolute minimums and those people walk in your door, I mean, right now, here in just a few weeks, we're going to be set back to 40 people, and we've budgeted for 43. And so as we move forward, I think it's just extremely important when we talk about adding personnel, do you ever get to that level? And if we don't start to protect against that, we end up where we were last year and the year before with us trying to defend these streets with 36 people. And that, my friend, puts an ungodly stress on that department as we're going through right now. So, I mean, when I brought this proposal forward as it being flexible, I mean, one of the biggest parts of this is what Councilman Davidson is bringing forward, is we got to get another detective. But I have to staff those squads 6, 6, and 6. So that would be our first priority if we add one person. Let's just say that that's all we can afford and we can add one. That's the absolute number one priority. 6 is on a squad, and add that 4th detective back. Without a doubt, that's where we're at as a department. But if we add 2 people, we get the detective back. Now we got a squad of 7. We got the pop unit as 2 as a supplement, and now we got a 7th guy on a squad. And we would obviously, like I talked about, position that to the point of our most calls for service. But that's still another car that we can use, data-driven policing. I mean, and I'm not talking about data over the past year. I'm talking about data this week, and assign that car to that area. And those things are going to have an impact. You know, there's this major discussion, is this going to eliminate crime? No, it's not going to eliminate crime. But what it will do is it adds a deterrent. It adds another factor that as you come into that neighborhood to maybe do something that you're planning on or you've planned to do, and there's the squad car. Well, I can't do it today. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. There's the squad car. I can't do it. And pretty soon you do start to deter that. And how do we measure that? I don't know. I don't think the only thing you can measure it against is what's happened in the past. But what are we preventing right now with the pop unit? I mean, really, I can show you what they've done for us on the front side, but really, what have they already prevented? We don't know. We don't know, but I can tell you it's effective. So just in a brief overview, I mean, I'm trying to break this down in, it has to be sustainable over time, and I think that's why we have a plan. But at the same time, I think we have to think about the here and the now, and what's realistic for the here and the now. And what that is we got 3 policemen we have to replace, and if we add a policeman, in about 10 months from now, or less, depending on if we can get a couple certified guys, we could get that detective back. That's the here and the now. And so as we move forward, as you look through the matrix, you can see how these other things are just going to benefit us as we go forward. Yeah. So I hope I broke that down a little bit. If I missed something, feel free to ask.
This is where I'm hoping that we continue to invest in, and I know you guys have gotten a good start. They had an article about gun violence drops in Cedar Rapids. You hear about that? I'm always looking at Iowa because I like to compare apples to apples, and you know what's happening in California, what works for them doesn't always work for us. But it already started. Overall crime in the rise in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So-called gun violence has dropped significantly last year. The success is not a result of new gun control laws, but rather a new policing strategy that focuses attention on individuals who are the most likely to commit crimes with a gun.
Absolutely.
It's steps. It's kind of similar to what we got started, and to me, I think those are great investments. If you go on to read the article, again, number of shots fired in Cedar Rapids dropped by 14% compared to the year before. This isn't with a bunch of people driving around in cars. Again, this is with some police officers getting to know who the people are. And I just want to say this. I'm just throwing this out there because I think this is important, and I'm all in for investing in this. The kid, I know you've heard about this. You did. I don't know what it is. I'm bad with years, but that guy, he was slow, mentally handicapped, and everybody knew him in the neighborhood. He's a big guy, though. He's a big man, and he would love the police officers. Wanted to be a cop when the police would come and a police area and stuff like that. He would run up on them and try to give them a hug and stuff. Hey, and they all knew him. I can't remember his name. Well, they had a new cop, and the new cop didn't get the proper training. He was in this area. He didn't know this guy. The guy was coming up on him to give him a hug, probably just like he does with all the police officers. This guy got scared, shot him because he didn't know. And I think that's a small story to say how important I think things like this are, and I just think we need to continue. I'm just throwing this out there. I think we need to continue as we hire new people to invest in programs like this, letting our police get out into those problem areas. I think it'll pay huge dividends for us. I think it's already started to. I think we just need to be mindful that we need to stay committed to that too.
Well, it's something we haven't discussed a lot when you talk about adding personnel, but that's the officer safety portion of this. I mean, I can show you right now, basically countless videos of armed encounters that officers are handling all by themselves. And I'm here to tell you, knock on wood, because those are dangerous, dangerous situations. In the last 2 weeks, we have arrested individuals that were armed in 4 different encounters. And these encounters are done by, at least the initial part of the encounter, by one officer. And so when you got 4 or 5 guys working the streets, I mean, that's just something we all need to keep in the back of our minds, that help might not be just around the corner in Burlington, Iowa. And so as we talk about trying to keep the department staffed, let alone adding staffing, and that goes to my point of getting behind and not being able to catch up. So, I mean, just keep that in your mind when we
And
talk
having
about
staffing
adding
and keep.
people, it's trying to maintain staffing as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we just held a test. We had 7 people apply for 3 positions. And we're not talking about a job that doesn't pay anything. We're talking about a job that pays a good wage for this area, great benefits. And when I took the test, almost 30 years ago, there were no openings and 300 applicants. 7 people. Let me make myself clear. 7 people that they knew were 3 positions. So it's going to become a crisis, ladies and gentlemen, and that's just the bottom line. And we need to try to, as best as we can, put on what we can afford and get out in front of this thing as best we possibly can. And I don't mean to say that to try to sway our position. I put together a plan I thought had some fiscal responsibility built into it. So that's not my point. That's a reality. Okay?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
And just for me personally, I absolutely totally agree with him. However, we don't have $420,000 to cover 2 police officers and the SAFER grant. What we can come up with is the money to get him his 1 officer, to get the detective, put the franchise fee up with this parameters, and by the time that's passed and ready to go, we'll have the money so he can put on the staff that he needs. But for right now, to fit our timeline for this budget, I'm still saying we authorize that 1, we increase the property tax by 10 cents, and we make those 2 cuts. And we've got it paid for that 1 officer now.
See, I'm kind of like you. I could go for at least that, because we've got to do something, and I know how important that detective position is going to be, but let's pay for it without a property increase. VenueWorks has had 3 years. They've tried. It's just not the community for it. I think we're just asking too much out of the auditorium. I don't think it's VenueWorks. It's the auditorium's just not. It's just not going to happen for this area, for that building. So let's just let it go back to what we've done before. Let's see if we can add to that. Let's see if we can learn from some things. But if we stop the bleeding with VenueWorks, because we're just going to, in 2 years, we're just going to say no. Why don't we do it now to address the problem? No tax increase. We need to let VenueWorks go. God bless them, but we need to let them go.
I have a
And that's
question.
almost $200,000.
How much was the auditorium costing us on an annual basis before VenueWorks?
The most previous couple of years was 290 to 300,000 a year.
300,000 a year.
And this budget's built with them being at 360,000 net cost, and they may not hit that target, but
Right.
if we were to, when we were doing that, I think we had 3 personnel down there, and that's based on the wages from 3 years ago, and now you're going into next year, so you're going 4 years later wage scale. You most likely, if you're hiring personnel back into those positions, they may be at the low end of the scale for the positions, but the title positions are still going to be on a pretty close to the same levels as they were before. You could staff it differently, but the staffing that we had down there before, the savings isn't going to be a huge amount. It should be some, but it isn't going to be a huge amount.
I mean, I think looking to the future, I think the auditorium is something we definitely should look at. with or without venue, I don't think Venue Works is the key to this. Like you say, it's been a money loser for years.
That's true, so if it has, and it's proven that in 3 years that it's not gonna be able to work, we should cut ties now instead of waiting for
No,
2
he's
years.
No,
saying
you're
you
not
gotta-
hearing me.
Yeah,
Okay,
Cutting them isn't gonna solve the problem. We're averaging $290,000 to $300,000 expense before they even got to town. So terminating their deal is not gonna save you that much money.
if
And
we,
secondly, to fit it into a budget that we're supposed to get locked into, next week or the week after, I don't know how you go to people like Venue Works and say, get out of here, even though they've made commitments to, and so forth. They've
we've
got
already had,
financial
we already made
exposure.
we already made an agreement with them in advance that if it didn't work within 3 years, that we could cut ties. We made that agreement so that if things got ugly.
With notice.
Right, right. Well, I'm not saying break any rules, give them the notice that they need. That's just where I'm coming from. Again, we're on the same team, we're trying to get to the same place.
Yeah,
We
and
just
I-
have different thoughts, guys.
and until we investigate it, I can't go along with that because we don't know. what
I
we're
think
gonna say.
we considered shuttering, I mean, it came up in conversation of shuttering the auditorium.
Yeah, and I'm all in favor of investigating it, but I
Yeah,
just
I
don't
am
think
too.
I'm agreeing with you, Mr. Fleming, you can't count that as part of your budget right now. Because it's not a given.
The only other thing I had to look into, as far as I was concerned, was looking at recycling. Everything else was nickel and dime. I didn't feel like it was really doing us any good to make any adjustments, so
Okay, who's next?
let's start doing some tapering.
I appreciate your efforts, Mayor, but I don't think there's any way we would save the $200,000 either. I mean, there's still, those same expenses are still gonna exist. Somebody else is going to have to do them. Can we need to look and see if we can save money by managing it ourselves, but I don't, there's no way we would save the $200,000. And the recycling thing, we're obligated to do that at this point. We're not obligated, we're mandated. Maybe not the recycling program, but we have to have some means of reducing waste that goes into the landfill based on the 1989 analysis. And we were required, I think, in the first 10 years or whatever it was, to reduce it by 25%, and then we were required to reduce it another 25%. And to do that, the only thing we were able to come up was the recycling program. I don't like our recycling program. I think it's unnecessarily expensive and something that I absolutely think we should look at, but I don't think we can count on saving $400,000 from that in this year and the next year and the next year. There's still gonna be some expense there, but I think we can absolutely look at it. I can't, I just, it's so difficult to wrap my arms around making the cuts that you offered, Jim, and Jim. I think, for one reason, if we're gonna hope to get a franchise fee passed, we don't need to be alienating anybody. And I'm looking at getting the problem that we have with staffing solved and not trying to piecemeal it together year after year after year. I think the franchise fee may be our only hope. You know, putting a detective in is great, it's needed, but it's not enough. And if we make cuts to a couple of institutions that are very near to and dear to people, we may not get the support that we need for that. And I know a lot of people have said that franchise fee won't pass, but a lot of people said the bond issue for the police department wouldn't pass either. And we got a 70% approval rating. People have stepped up for public safety. And I trust in them to know that we're in difficult times right now. And I don't think they're ones that are gonna last for decades. I think I think we're in a, we're just in a bad position in this country right now. And eventually we're gonna work ourselves through it, but until then, we need some help. And as the chief pointed out, when he applied for the position, there were 300 people looking for a job in law enforcement. And today there were 7. The most recent, there were 7. When I applied for the police department back in the 1980s, it was the same way. There were 300 people that applied. They had to open up another room, large room, so we had enough room to get everybody in and to take that test. Which that's serious. That's almost scary. And from those 300 people, they were able to come up with 10 of them that could pass the test and move on to the next step. So if you use those numbers and those percentages of those 7, we'll be lucky that one of them qualifies to be an officer. Hopefully qualified or certified officers will apply, but I would be remiss not to mention the fact that and I think this come to all the county. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I know it did. We got a letter from Jason Hutchison, he's with the Chamber of Commerce, he's the director. And it simply says support for police officers. And you've all read it, and he's pointing out how the acts of violence within the community deters people from looking at our community. And he's saying it's time to fully fund those positions that the chief has asked for. He didn't say how to do it, but he did say to fully fund and support his plan of action. And that's not just Jason saying that. There was actually a committee that was formed at the Chamber of Commerce to look at that. And that speaks volumes too.
As that group has met, they've talked with the chief to some extent too, and they understand and recognize the level of what he's asking for in terms of the costs that would go with that. Just to mention to your point, I don't think they've ever formally come up with a presentation for what to give to the council on that, but they are willing, as a group, they expressed a willingness to look at increased costs. And that's from the business community. That's not representative of the public as a whole, but that is a fairly solid message that's come out of a portion of our business community.
Well, I kind of want to get down to, what we want to do. I mean, we've all keep voicing our opinions back and forth, back and forth. And there's 3 options for being able to either get more staffing or not at all, one is nothing. And I don't think any one of us wants to do that. Another is the franchise fee. And the other is raising taxes. I mean, really, realistically, at this point in time, those 2 things are our options for getting more staffing right now.
Yeah, well, what we need to look at, though, is what staffing are we?
Okay, so then
are we
let's get
committed
to
looking
that.
at? Yeah, that's what we need to get
And
down
for
as
me-
to, with cuts today, without counting any franchise fee, what are we at?
Right, well, for me, it's either, one would be all or nothing, which was, the first example we were given, or kind of an in-between, which is 3 officers, 3 fire personnel, and maintaining the staffing at the end of the COPS grant. I mean, those to me, if we're gonna do this, we should do it right. I don't see why we need to.
As far as going in the terminology for a franchise fee, or for us to do that? I mean,
I guess just for what we decide on, as far as, we have to figure out what kind of staffing we want, and then how are we gonna get there? So I guess we kind of needed to decide what staffing we can all agree on.
Right.
And then step towards, I mean, we don't have that much time, and then step
but
towards.
I'm just trying to get a handle.
Right.
You're saying you're all or nothing, so just.
Well, either go all in and,
For 6 and for
Six,
what
six.
everybody asked for?
yeah,
Okay, or what has been presented?
or a kind of middle ground, which would be 3-3 and maintaining, so would be this one, right there.
3 and 3, maintaining with the
Yeah.
COPS grant, okay.
So,
I would point out that the chiefs have asked for what they need to provide the service. The fire chief took it one step further and has applied for a grant, and the grant provides 6 officers a portion of their salaries for 3 years that would actually save money over putting 3 officers on. And then he expressed a willingness to let 3 of those officers go through attrition at the end of that grant period. And so it would be a mix, like you had said, not quite like the second
Right.
proposal, but would be a greater savings. It would be less than what Jim has shown us as far as the funding for the 6 and 6. And we wouldn't put this in the budget, but we would amend the budget, if I read you right last Monday, we would amend the budget to cover these positions if the franchise fee passed, if we went with a franchise fee.
If you're doing it with a franchise fee. And I don't know if that's what you're suggesting, or,
I'm afraid of putting all of our hopes into something that may or may not. I mean, you make excellent points. I would vote for it now that I've thought about it as it being spread out with small amounts. But I'm afraid that other people aren't gonna think about it that way. So I'd love to do it, but I would only wanna do it, I mean, we could do it either way, but.
From what I'm hearing, the franchise fee will go. People want that's what I'm getting. I'm getting that people want the extra, they want the extra support, they want the extra staffing. For the majority, not everybody, but for the majority, that's what they're saying, and they're saying that they're willing to pay extra for it. I will look through the budget. Again, I don't believe in butchering your city to try to make something happen. I presented some cuts that I thought I weren't happy with, but I felt like it was time to do that, and I'm not getting any consensus or any support on those cuts. So I have to go back to whatever we do at the bare minimum. Let's get the chief a detective, at the bare minimum. But I as well am for moving forward with the franchise fee. I still think it's we wouldn't have to use that for everything. I don't think we would have to use that for. I think you can find a way to come up with the.
If you do that according to the page 2 on this first handout that Jim gave us last week, 1 police officer maintain the staffing and the cops grant. Additional levy of $18,475. That's maintaining library and economic development fund. I honestly don't see why we need to keep funding economic development for $70,000. I honestly do not see why we need to do that. I think that's an easy $20,000, maybe $30,000 cut.
I'm cool with that.
But that would save us 3 cents maybe if we did that. But so if you went to that, and you'd have roughly a 15-cent, little over 16-cent tax increase, you could fund that 1 police officer, get your detective on, and not cut the library.
I just don't think that's enough.
I know, but how are you gonna pay for the rest of it? And then you can put your franchise fee out there and say, if you want the rest of it, here's how we're gonna pay for it. I don't see how I honestly, raising property taxes 60 cents this year, $1 next year, $1.50 the year after, $1.50 the year after, $1.78, that's no good.
Right.
Huh?
I think we all agree with that.
Okay, we've got about 6 minutes. Can we come up with 3 people that are on the same page then? Because if this, again, what we want to come up with is at least a format that we say this is what we're all, or at least the majority is willing to accept moving forward. And if all doesn't go right, we're still at least content with what we've got.
I just really feel like the 3 and 3 would be really just, I mean, because what they've asked for is what they need, not what
6
they
and
want.
6, you mean?
No, well, I mean, if we're not gonna go full force with it, the 3 officers maintain the cops grant and 3 fire
Okay,
fire
and
personnel.
so that means 78-cent tax increase and 88-cent, 88, 89, and $1 in the
That's a
next
lot
5
more.
years.
But no, that's not adding on, that's not adding those amounts each time, correct? No, so it would be 1671, and then next year it's 1682, and then next year it's 1682, 1682, and then last year, 2022, is 1695. It's not,
Yeah, it's $1 more than now.
so it's just $1 more than now
By 15, 20.
by,
is what you're-
by 2022.
Yeah, 15, 22.
I just don't, I
You-
know it
You'd be in
can be a
favor of
lot.
doing a property tax at that level.
Yes.
Is anyone else willing to go to a property tax levy of that, to do that?
And I don't see why we can't put the franchise fee out there to then get the rest of it. If we get it, then great, we can
I'm getting
give
put
them
the
what they
franchi-
need.
Am I the only one that's put the franchise fee up?
I would do it if we can do the 3 and 3.
Because I'm
But
getting people that are bully on the
I'm
franchise.
only hearing 2 of
Mm-hmm.
you willing to go to a property tax increase of that amount.
I have to,
Where can you get to a,
How high are you willing to go on property tax?
So
2%.
here it is now, and then it doesn't increase that
2%
terribly much once we
property
do the
tax.
initial. I mean, it's. I just don't think one is gonna. I mean, it'll help, yes, but is it gonna?
But see, that's my point.
yeah.
It's one, to get us to a temporary solution. And then you put the franchise fee vote out there. If it goes, great, then we can go all in for what the rest of it is. But in this budget, for this time, you get one with a minimal property tax increase.
You can add 2 police officers and 1 firefighter for a 2.5% tax.
I feel the same way you do. If we're gonna have property tax increase, let's not play around with it. Let's get what we need. You know, if that's what you're gonna do. I don't wanna do that. Again, I feel like this thing is screaming for a franchise fee, and I wouldn't say that on my own. That's all the emails that I'm getting is, let's do franchise fee. And again, I know that some of it may be catered because
Yeah.
people know that I'm against taxes, but
And
people are
because they
saying
think
that,
it might not pass. I had a man come up to me at Hy-Vee yesterday. Mr. Fleming, you in the council? Yep. Hope you'll do with that franchise fee. I said, really? Why? He said, because it won't pass. And he turned and walked away.
that's one person, and
What a
again,
nice
they said
gentleman.
that the last one that we went, they said that wouldn't pass, no chance. And it
No.
did by an alarming
didn't hear
amount.
that.
That tells me that our community, when it comes down to it, if they see, look at the budget, community. Look at the budget. Show me something that I can't see. Because we're all looking at the same budget. And if you're saying, well, you can cut money here, go down and visit these places. Go down and visit these places, spend some time and actually see. Do you see areas where they could? Because something's gonna suffer. Something's gonna suffer, and I'm staying here. I don't want Burlington to suffer. I'm not leaving. Did you guys get that?
You might be.
No, I won't. I can guarantee you that. I'm not
Would
leaving.
you,
I don't see that you have a 3rd council member on board with that type of a property tax increase.
What, my 2% or the other?
Hers,
the 3 and 3,
to cover the
because it
3.
does, the
No,
initial
I
increase.
can't.
And if you're gonna do what you're suggesting, it would make sense to do the SAFER grant application for 6, and then just reduce back to 3
Yeah.
after the grant was over.
So is there an option for that one?
I don't have that shown, but
Okay.
it'd be comparable
But
dollar
Right.
amount.
That's
The
the,
odds of getting a safer grant,
But,
we all know are.
but you have to find a solution that you can get 3 of you to agree to, and
Right.
you're not getting a 3rd one on this one.
anybody want to argue their
I want to go
position?
2 and 1.
I've said what I want to do.
Well, we still have to come to a consensus of 3 people. Again, let's just let me get this down so I can understand it again. Annie, you're all or nothing. You're as is or as asked for, right?
Well-
No, you're 3 and 3.
Right.
That's what you are.
Because it appears that I will not.
I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna ask you to try to veer from that thought process.
Right.
And go.
And that's exactly what
and
I-
go like you went with your gut. You said all in, because
Yeah.
here we still need to have some continuity. This is what we're seeing, and I think it's proven. The chief said that. I believe him. I do believe that 6 with the SAFER grant is going to be just as cost effective, even more so, I would think, and hoping so, that he would cut loose. So if you're gonna go with that, I think, can we all agree that we're better off doing the 6 firemen with the SAFER?
Oh,
We've already
so the
approved that.
3, 6.
But we're out of time here, guys. You're supposed to be at another meeting.
All right, when are we coming back?
Who's supposed to be at another
Well,
meeting?
gee.
There's an economic development meeting that starts here at 4, but they're waiting for you. They're waiting for you to be done.
I think
But
we're close. I think we're close.
if you're not getting the 2 on the property tax, or getting more than the 2 on the property tax increase at that level, then what level can you get an agreement on to have some level? Because it seems like the other alternative is a lower staffing level that you can come to an agreement on with a more limited property tax increase, and you may have the ability to get folks to go beyond that, to go out for an election to cover any additional staff beyond that. If you add, though, for an example, 3 police officers with a property tax increase, and then say that you would add more, if you could have the franchise fee, your likelihood of getting that
Oh, gee.
funded is much less. If it was small before, going halfway with one and then leaving it halfway for the other
Yeah.
makes it less likely to get done.
Exactly.
At the same time, if you don't get a franchise fee through and you don't fund positions, you're not getting it done.
You're not doing your job. That's the way I look at it.
So we can have another budget meeting on Monday. If you wanted to do 3:30 again, or I'm sorry, do 4:30 prior to the 5:30 council meeting, or if you wanted to do it earlier than
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
so
May
earlier.
do it earlier, honestly.
At like 3:30.
If that is early enough, yes.
I'm about to say, I'm good with any time.
Yeah.
As long as,
I mean, I can figure it out on my end.
can be through there with
I
these.
don't
Does that
have much-
conflict with anything in the afternoon? I don't think it did for me, so. What time?
Monday, 3:30 now?
3:30 at least.
Okay, I think that works. All right, thanks,
I'm
everybody.
not changing.
for coming. We'll be back Monday at 3:30. Sure, I'll get some.